wanting to look at co-coaching really. So I've just tried to break it down a little bit to create some discussion around sort of why co-coaching can be effective, what are the positives and the negatives of it, and is it something that we can utilise particularly in the grassroots setting. So basically, my ideas around co-coaching is working within a team. So utilising everybody available. So a lot of us will have assistant managers or co-coaches, just making use of them to divide up the responsibility for that player learning and understanding, bringing together people's different perspectives, really. So the first little thing I thought of doing is breaking out into 3 little breakout rooms just to try and get some chat going, just around your experiences. So we've got sort of people in different environments, coaching wise, within the chat. So just have a little discussion around anybody who's experienced co-coaching or coaching as a peer, how it's been used, what's been successful, what's not been successful, what's been the keys to making it successful, and what kind of challenges it's brought. So I think if Jack can stick us in some breakout rooms,
should be done in about 5 seconds. There we go. You should have an invite now to go straight to your room. All right. Stuff. Does that let you join any room then or not?
Let's have a look. It just says please wait to be assigned.
Right. I'll just stick you in a random room. I'll tell you what. How long are you giving them?
I don't know, 5-6 minutes.
In 3 minutes, I'll just bang you in another one then. All right.
Yeah, no worries, pal.
Here we go.
All right, John.
Hello, Jack.
How are you doing, Carl?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Good, France.
Splendid.
Well, and John, who are you working with at the RTC at the minute?
Working with Ree at the minute, but with
who, sorry?
Rhiannon Gray.
All right, yeah.
We had a little bit of a CPD, well, not a CPD, but a little bit of a Zoom meeting last week around co-coaching and sort of what good co-coaching may look like. So you've asked who I'm working with, Ree, but really it's mainly working with Ree, but then obviously you work with the S&C coach, you're working with obviously the technical director, the 14s coaches, because obviously you've got some 13s, some 12s that are going to move up next year. You work with the 10s coaches because obviously some 10s are going to come up to the 12s next year. So mainly you work with the coach you're in, but there's different aspects and different parts of the whole club that you work with. I think that's probably an important message to get out there straight away. And I imagine it'll probably be the same for yourselves, yourself. Obviously, analysts and
definitely. The one thing I noticed straight away, and I hated it, was the S&C take the first 10-15 minutes of the session, and then the coaches used to always be standing like 40 yards away, having a bit of crack, just standing where their session was set up. I remember asking Charlie, who was our S&C bloke, I said, "Oh, like, how does that make you feel when that happens?" And he was kind of like, "Yeah, it just kind of separates the two." So I've just made like a massive thing of whenever he's working, I'm there and I'm helping him, and I'm like coaching some of the bits that I might not have obviously the knowledge that Charlie's got. Well, I haven't got the knowledge that Charlie's got because he's brilliant, but like I can add things in from a football context in terms of the movements that they're doing and how that relates to the game. And then Charlie then comes and does that in my sessions in terms of like, I'm coaching the football, but he might drop in a few things about. So it's a good point, mate, around like it's not just you, and if there's 2 people coaching, it's not just the person you're coaching with. There's a lot more people that you can class as co-coaches. You're right, mate. But so I see a lot of that, And again, I don't know how it looks at RTC, but not just Borough, I see it all over the place where there's an S&C working and coaches are 40 yards away, and that's poor, in my opinion. Like,
Yeah, again, this funny enough, this topic did come up, didn't it, Jack? Because I think sometimes we find we were like, Jack will probably speak about his interpretation really, but I kind of like to get involved. I'll probably annoy Catherine a bit, if I'm honest. He's the S&C coach, but I don't like just be like standing watching.
no,
I like to get involved, but in the discussion we had at the RTC, it was like, so if it's not going to be effective, obviously just standing 40 yards away, how can we get around that? And that, we kind of talked about maybe, well, say, obviously there's two of us plus Catherine, so there's three coaches, maybe it's me or Ree. Instead of working with the S&C and the 12s, we go and work with the 10s, or we go and work with the 14 or something.
no,
And work that way as well, which was also the classes.
yeah. Well, one thing we've done that is brilliant, and it's just 15-16s, because me and Charlie wanted to like get something done and trial it for a season before we start chatting to other people. But all the S&C work he does is aligned with what like the rest of the age groups do in terms of like they've got to be consistent messages. But whatever theme we're working on, he's manipulating his stuff to fit that. So if we're working on counter-attacking, there's a lot of like forward-facing stuff to turn and run the opposite way. So little things like that. Or if it's pressing, the S&C work he does is like around short, sharp distances over like 6 to 8 seconds. So everything's manipulated around the themes, which in terms of core coaching, it's really, really joined up. Like, and again, that's not everybody. That's just something we're trying. So, but it's been class so far. So I've really enjoyed that. Like, and then obviously I don't have to worry or ask Charlie about what he's doing. I already know like the S&C work he's doing fits with what I'm coaching.
Yeah.
So it's really easy for me to like kind of input on it and see what he's doing. So that's been like successful.
How long's it took to get to that point in terms of like planning and communication?
A full half of the season. We've got like a bank of sessions now where and obviously because we've done 2 cycles of the themes now, so we've been through all of it once and then went through all of it again, and that's give us the chance to have this library now where he's got like, if we're working on forward first, which is one of our themes, forward first, he now has like, we do 3 sessions throughout that week. He has about 6 sessions around forward first in terms of like an S&C session. So he can pick now, like going forward, or if once we eventually share this with other age groups, we can now go to them and say, pick one of these 6, and your S&C coach can deliver that, and it fits with that theme. And then I think for some of the themes, we've only got 2 or 3 sessions because obviously with COVID and stuff, we didn't miss like a few weeks. But we're in a good place with that, like, so I think that'll be good once we've got it, and then we'll share it with the rest of the age groups.
Awesome. I think that's a massive part of it, isn't it? Like effective co-coaching comes down to like your planning and communication. And if you're saying it like in your environment, which is like from the outside is an elite environment, if it's took a full half season to get to that point,
Aye.
Grassroots coaches, it might take longer. But if you start the steps in place and plan and communicate properly, like, yeah, you'll make progress.
Aye, definitely, mate. And like you say, that communication's been massive, and obviously it is tough. I'm not daft. I know, like, so RTC, for example, coaches can be out all day, and then the racing to get to the sessions and stuff. So it is different. But it certainly is helpful if you spend the time to do it when you can. It is really useful. Like, in terms of, this is for anybody you don't have to name them, but like, who's the best coach you've worked with? So it's like a pair. So I know you mentioned that it's not always the coach, but I'm talking on like about you and somebody else coaching a group together now. And again, you don't have to say the name, but what like things did they do that you think was class or good, or you felt and you enjoyed about it?
For mine, and it's like, I'll be honest, co-coaching with someone else isn't something I'm very good at, because I'm quite energetic as a coach, and I tend to like try and get in a bit too early and too often, even if it's not my session. But I would say like someone that I bounce off really well with because of that is Joey. So whenever we do sessions together, like we have a session on a Friday night at the Beacon together, we do stuff obviously at Cramlington together, like, because we're probably quite similar in terms of personality, we work well together.
Yeah.
We've probably started to plan a bit more effectively. Like a year ago, we would just jump in on each other's sessions, and it was fine because it was us.
Aye.
But I suppose that partly comes down to like the relationship and the friendship that we have. So if that was somebody different, there would be a lot more work needed to be in it, I suppose.
Aye. Oh, class.
I suppose just let know if you're in a two and one person's leading the session and one isn't. I thought if you're not leading the session, it's just what do you want them to do? So have like a clear focus for them, whether it's individual stuff with certain players, whether it's linked to PD development plans, whether it's linked with defensive unit, or just having a clear focus is obviously beneficial.
I think whenever I've not enjoyed it, it's been because I've like, and I think back to when I was a trainee, and you just like, and it's when they're just cracking on with it, and they haven't really told you anything, and you're like just second guessing, or you're thinking, well, I'll just do, you making up things, or I'll try and get involved here or there, and because then it just becomes like generic stuff that you're doing. The best ones when I've been like the assist have been when I've been given like a specific job. So they said, "Oh, like look out for this or that," and I don't want to like say too much because I'm going to share a bit when I do one when we kind of recap on this. But we basically at Borough we've got 3 ways, and we'll do like across 3 weeks we'll do 3 different ways of co-coaching. And one way on one week, a different way another week, and then the third week the third one, and then we come back to the start and go around it again. But I just think being specific, especially for the assist, because there's not worse than just feeling like you're just a body. You know what I mean? And I've kind of tried to take that on when I've led as well, and making sure the assist doesn't feel like they're just a body, because it is horrible. It's not great, and it's not great use of a coach, really. You know what I mean? Something that's got some good stuff to offer. It's not good use of them.
No, definitely.
That's good stuff. Well, we'll jump back into the main room.
Spot on, mate.
Blue bedroom, Jono.
What are you doing, you little hobbit?
It's going on YouTube, this.
Oh, there's a few.
Cool. I think
We've got just about everybody back in.
I think so, yeah. I think that's everyone, mate.
Spot on. So I suppose really just in those little breakout rooms, ones I was dipping out of, and then I got into 2 of them. There's some really good discussion. I don't know if somebody's wants to feedback from each room and you know what came up, and then any discussion points around that. I don't know if somebody wants to lead from breakout room 1. Who's in there?
Joey, Harry's room, that. I'll pick on him.
Which room you in?
So Joey in that one.
Yeah, Joey, Andy, Caroline, and Dipper.
Yeah, so that was the first one I was in. I don't know. You happy feedback on that, Joey?
Yes, boss. We mentioned a few points there, and I think the main ones was kind of know the person you're coaching with, like have that relationship with them. So like there was the grassroots, where you might be coaching an attendance team with a parent, so like which might have a different philosophy to you. Now it's trying to get them on board, have that connection with them to do that.
Yeah.
Aye. The other one was how
I think
much
one of the key things I've got written, more for later on. Go on, boy.
I'm losing you, mate.
My internet just knocked up. I think my internet is you hear us now?
I sound like a robot. I sound like a robot.
It's better than normal. I'll try stop my video. Is that any better?
Why aye?
Much better.
Now, one of the things I've got written down for later on was just about really whatever, especially in grassroots, but whatever experience you're in, it's about surrounding yourselves and teaming up with the right people. So if you don't sit down very early on and discuss like your philosophy or your ideas or your styles, then if it turns out that you don't have sort of aligned styles, then I don't think it'll ever work as a co-coach. Because I think you'll always be pressing against each other a little bit. I don't know if anybody, agrees, disagrees, challenges that idea or not. But that would be my viewpoint on that one.
I agree to a certain extent, but I still think you've got to have somebody that's prepared to challenge you. Because if we're all saying the same thing all the time, then there's no check and challenge. The kids are maybe not getting different viewpoints.
Yeah, 100%. I think, you've got to be able to challenge each other. But again, it's having that relationship where people's comfortable to challenge each other as well. You'll know some people, even if they disagree, won't challenge. I think it's important to have that element of challenge about it.
Yeah, I asked a question in our group around what was the best experience you've had of, or you didn't have to name who it was, but just say why you enjoyed working with somebody. I know Jack used an example, and straight away I wrote down, obviously, he said the reason why was because it was similar, which is great. But then in terms of what I'm probably leaning more towards what Wayne's saying there around, is that just because somebody similar is comfortable for you?
Yeah.
And you're in your comfort zone. And although it might be uncomfortable, you might get a little bit more out yourself and a little bit more out of them, because then you question each other's thing. But in terms of like my setting, you can't really go that much against each other, because if you're working on a theme, you should be given the same messages in terms of like what you've got down as a team. So I totally agree as well, Stephen, at the same time, in terms of as long as you know what you're coaching, I don't think what you're coaching should be too dissimilar, even though your personalities might be.
Yeah.
The detail you're given should be the same, and that's where you're probably challenging each other in terms of how it's delivered.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm good for both. Yeah.
You're getting that balance between challenge and consistency, really. Do you have anything else to add in, Joey, from your room?
I think Div's made a point on the extrovert thing. So I think just to kind of concrete what he was saying there, if you've got like two people the same, it might not always work. If Dips wants to jump in on that, he can rescue us there a bit.
All it was, I was just thinking about, like, if you've got two introverts, how does that work? And then if you might have the other side of the coin, you might have two extroverts, and then you've got a bit of a battle for who's going to be leading that as well. So I was just thinking about that. I don't know what people's ideas on that is. I just think if you've got two introverts, they're going to be maybe very withdrawn and very quiet. But if I had a mixture of them two, then you could have something maybe powerful together. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say my view would be like, you probably want, in an ideal world, you'd have one each, wouldn't you? And then sort of naturally your extrovert would probably take more control and lead things, and your introvert would back up. I don't know, that might be right, it might be wrong, but that's what I would say to that. But no, good point, really good point. Scotty, did you have much from your room?
Yeah, quite a lot, to be fair. Just echoing a little bit of what we just said there, actually, about knowing a point I was going to make there is, if you have got introverts and extroverts as coaches, if you are two introverts, does that translate to the players, and do the players understand that is what you are as a coach? And I know it's a bit of a cliche saying it, like, but if it works for them, well, is there anything wrong with that? And if you're two extroverts, is there anything wrong with that? I think one big thing that came from our room was, are your roles defined? Like, do you understand what your roles are within the coaching setup? Because if you're both just shouting things for the sake of shouting things to try and get one up on each other, it's not going to work. Whereas if there's actual information going in, and the players are, say you're coaching the senior team, if those players understand that that's what you are, and those players are similar to that as well, I think it could go hand in hand. Whereas if your team are quite a quiet team, but they almost do the talking with feet, then you can give that information in a calmer way. If it translates to the players and it works, then is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. Again, it's a bit of a cliche to say it, but you've got to know your players. But I think for me, that's one thing we got from our room, and also it was about ego as well. Sometimes people don't like to relinquish control of that lead sort of role. People like to be in charge. A lot of people like to be in charge of it, like, and some people don't like to be what's perceived as the assist as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that relinquishing control, like looking at my experience to co-coaching, so like they differ massively from being in the academy to being in grassroots. So obviously, well, you'll know from like us working together in there, Scott, like you're always co-coaching in the academy. So it's always set out, you work to set themes, you work to, everything's in place for you. But in grassroots, where there's a little bit more freedom, perhaps, one of my biggest problems with it, like working in senior football grassroots, was just relinquishing that control. So I now work as manager at Alnwick with an assistant who's much more experienced than me, who's done the job 3 or 4 times before when they were in the Northern League, so higher than where we are now. And even to him, like, I struggle to relinquish control a little bit. But it's just about surrounding yourself with people who you trust and who step up to the plate more than anything. Like, I think we had that little discussion, I think it was in your group, about just making sure it's the right people you're with. And actually, I've relinquished a bit of control, so he does probably half the coaching, and I do the other half. But I now quite enjoy being able to take a step back and being able to perceive exactly what's going on with the group and who's doing well, rather than just being on top of everything and being like the control freak I was, really.
I think a good example of that at the highest level is Crystal Palace. Like, Ria Lewington, for me, does my head in on the touchline, never ever shuts up. But that's obviously something that's been agreed with the manager, Roy Hodgson, and it's obviously something that happens in training as well. So the players are used to it. So therefore, when it needs to happen, it needs to happen. And 99% of us probably don't agree with it. What's going on? Because if you're working at the highest level, then do they need that? But a lot of the time it does work for them. I think that's a good example of the highest level.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's coming from somebody that's not the manager as well, isn't it? So that's where it's either not Roy's style, or he's delegating that role to somebody to allow him to observe more. But I know for me, like, having worked as a sole coach and as a peer, now I wouldn't go back to working just myself. Being able to delegate and being able to look at things from a different standpoint is much, much better. Was there a third room as well? I think I only got into 2 of them. Was there a third room as well, Jack?
Yeah, that was me, Jono, Crofty, Steve and Brassy. I know Crofty obviously has already sort of touched on a couple of things. I would just sort of like chuck a question out there, if that's all right, just based on the discussions we've had. Like, so if you had to highlight the 3 key skills or attributes to like effective co-coaching, what would it be? Because I know I'm a rubbish co-coach. Like, I don't plan well. I don't do it. I don't think I deliver well as a co-coach. And it's something that I've spoken to like quite a few people about recently. I suppose, like, what are the 3 key things that I can do to become a better co-coach? What's the 3 key skills and attributes I need?
I think for me, like people will have different opinions. For me, the first bit that you have to get right, and we discussed it on the groups, is it's just surrounding yourself with the right people. So if you're not involved with somebody who you can work well with or you can work alongside, it will be a struggle and it will be a chore. I think it was Rob Atkin who made a good phrase to me once over about it. It was about delegation, not abdication as well. So it's been able to delegate roles without just abdicating what you do altogether, without stepping away and not taking a lead yourself at times. And the third one for me is when you're not the person leading, is to really use that time to trim your observation skills. I think, you know, it gives us so much more time to really take a step back and view things from a different standpoint, that it's worthwhile. I don't know if anybody else has got any kind of thoughts on from their experience of what really is key to making it work.
I agree with bits like you said there. I think the only thing that can be tough sometimes, Stephen, is and he said surround yourself with the right people. So sometimes you haven't got a choice. So I obviously went into Borough and there's two coaches straight away who I knew previously I probably wouldn't get on with. So you've got to try if you possibly can. Yeah, 100%. I would always try and do that, like now or in future. But sometimes you haven't got a choice in terms of like your boss or whoever's leading the program might say you're working with them now. So then I think if I was going to say three, come back to the question, Jack, it would probably be planning is by a mile the most important thing I've found. Because I know we said this in our breakout room, Jack. There's nothing worse than, and if I remember being a trainee in the odd time where I've turned up to a session, it's off the cuff, and I'm just second guessing what I need to be doing. So I'm just doing generic stuff. I find it much more useful when I've been the assist, where I've been given specific roles and I know clearly what I'm trying to do, what my job is in the session. So I always try and do that now, obviously with my assist now, Chris Hughes at Borough, before the session, at the beginning of the week, I always do our 3 sessions. I say what his role is, he'll lead one of them, and then I'll get him to tell me what he wants me to do. And then the other 2, I kind of make sure our planning knows exactly what he's delivering, whether it be he's working with individuals. We do like a 3 substitutions one where he gets 3 opportunities to jump in and he can use them 3 whenever he wants. And once he's used his 3, that's it. He's just got to then support what I'm coaching. But yeah, I think planning, I don't want to say all 3, but if I was going to give you one, Jack, out of 3, I would say planning is by far the most. And then reviewing as well. Like everybody talks about reviewing. How often do people do it? Probably not a lot, because you've not always got time and you're finishing sessions late on the night and you're trying to get home for your tea. I've probably all been there, but just a quick little way that I find useful is what went well, even better if. And me and you do, but back to what you said as well, Steve, that relationship's so important, because me and my assist now are at a point where we get on really well. We've turned it into a bit of banter. So I know, like one session before we even broke up, he's done the worst demo in the world. So an even better if I've just mentioned his demo, and it becomes a bit, we're on that wavelength now where it's a bit of crack as well, but then there's a bit of seriousness to it, in terms where one of his even better ifs after sessions might be, you know, the structure of the session or one of the ways he coached a player. And we always make sure we do that. It takes no longer than 5 minutes walking from the session to the indoor. So yeah, sorry, talking for too long now. So planning and definitely review. I would 2 out of 3, Jack.
Yeah, I think like you make a really good point there as well about specific roles for people. I think that's one of the key things for making it work is when you're the lead coach, if there is out the 2, like say the assistant has to know what their role is. So it could be anything like you're doing a whole session, so they know they're responsible for doing the technical aspect in there, or it might just be the warm up, or it might be taking 3 players away to work with. But you need, in order for everybody to have or feel involved, like you have to get them that involvement. So I think that's a great point in there.
I think for me as well, like echoing very, very much what everyone had said so far, I think you've got to be brave as well. You've got to have a little bit of bravery to be able to say, look, like, can you do something in this session for half an hour, 45 minutes that's going to allow me to observe, like you're saying, Pat, like allow me to step back and see it and use almost a different skill set in your coaching, not just coaching and talking and communicating, but also observing. And I think you've got to have that. You've got to have a little bit of bravery to say, look, like I'm gonna do it today. I'm not going to be in control of the whole session. I'm going to step back for 45 minutes.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of trust in the people around you, which I think why I know Crofty said there, like you can't always choose who you work with, especially if that's in like a work environment. And that was probably more thinking around, you know, choosing your coaching team at grassroots or non-professional level. But again, it's having trust in them, and it's having trust in yourself to step away. I know when I step away, I still find it difficult not to just jump in, because I'm a control freak, and I know I am. So I have to really work hard at that still to try and get it right. Kind of moving on, any next topic of conversation probably be like different ways of co-coaching. So, you know, what works well, what people have experienced that works well. So I know I've kind of just stole the 6 that we use at Sunderland. Would be like where we have, you know, one coach on the main theme, a second coach kind of counter theming. So I think, for example, if you're doing like attack v defenses, one would take, you know, the attackers trying to create in wide areas, and the other coach would work with the defense. You know, we have one coach sort of leads the session, and whilst the other works separately with individuals, or another coach targets individuals within the session. You know, we do a lot at Sunderland with the kids where we split the group in half, just because of high numbers really in ball contact time. When there's more than 2 of you, you can have obviously carousel training, and then coach mentoring is quite a big one. I think, like, how often do we sort of take half a session each with our co-coach, and then get the other person to review us, sort of give us feedback? You know, I know it's something I don't do enough of. Is that something we could do more of? So those are kind of the 6 ways we've utilised it. I don't know if anybody's experienced anything different, or anybody had positive or negative experiences from using them, or anybody's thoughts on the mentoring side, really.
Mentoring one's a really good one, actually. It's something I've very rarely done, if ever, to be honest. And I think it's something I would really benefit from. Not necessarily me mentoring somebody else, but definitely getting some feedback from a coach in the session. And I think it comes down to bravery, but I think Jamie said it in our group as well, ego. Are we actually receptive to actually taking that feedback on board? Are we receptive to actually being the one that's going to say to somebody, look, like this could have been a little bit better? And it's how you communicate it, obviously, but I think the coach mentoring thing is really important. And as long as you understand what it is that the coach was actually trying to work on, then why not do it?
Yeah, definitely. It's something I don't do enough of, but I've tried to utilise this year, working with somebody far more experienced than me, and just trying to get little snippets all the time off them. You know, what again, like we do the same at work as we do in football. I think Crofty said it before, like what went well and even better if. It doesn't have to be great detail. Don't know if anybody else has got anything more about the ways of doing it. I know Jack and Joey work together quite a lot. How do you guys kind of mix it up, or do you always do much the same thing?
People always this lively in this coffee club, like, oh.
I think thinking back to when I was sort of working at the academy, I think what worked well for me was obviously being a part-time member of staff, was Wayne as the full-time member of staff basically led on what the session looked like and what the design looked like. But I think what he then did is he kind of gave us roles and responsibilities within that. So, for example, I think we used to do a lot of carousel work. So obviously I would be in charge of one-to-ones for a period of time. So then it would mean that I could really focus on the detail of what one-to-ones look like. So although I suppose we weren't necessarily co-coaching on the grass, we were co-coaching on a program. So obviously I was maybe responsible for one-to-ones, 1v1s. Wayne would maybe be doing finishing. Someone else might be doing passing and receiving. So I think sometimes we get hung up on co-coaching being out on the grass and sort of two coaches standing next to each other. I think it goes deeper than that. I think it's away from the grass as well. So obviously that was the pre-session detail, if you like, in terms of what the practice design would look like. But then afterwards it would be, right, how did it go? He would always ask who had done well, who hadn't done so well, who struggled, what could we do to support the ones that were struggling, what could we do to further challenge the ones that were flying. So I think sometimes with co-coaching it's on the grass, but it's also away from the grass, if I've made any sense at all there.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just that connection with people, isn't it? And being able to do that, and the specific roles and responsibilities in it do help bring it out, and come with challenge each other and come with challenge the players along with it. Connections or not? Still here?
On and off.
School Wi-Fi.
I'll just let Jack lead it on.
That's where you're going wrong, Louis.
I know, that's why you're like my boss in it.
Probably like the last little discussion point for me really to open up would be, obviously there's a lot of people in the group work both within grassroots and within sort of the academy development side of things. What kind of advice would you give to grassroots coaches who maybe have less time available to plan, less time together with the players, and possibly less coaches available? What kind of advice would you give to them around the best ways they can co-coach within their environment?
Good question. Joey, I'm going to pick on you again because obviously I know you've definitely got more experience in this than me. So like Steve says, you work alongside a parent. So like, how do you co-coach? How do you plan for that within that sort of setting?
If I'm honest with you, mate, go for a pint. So it's that time of year. So like, when you go for that pint, it becomes honest then, and you can really spend that time talking about the players, talking about the game, talking about training, and then from that you build that connection. When I'm there, I mainly lead it, if I'm honest, because I've probably got the qualification and the coaching experience, because they're just there to, the sun's there, or because if I'm not there, they're covering, for an example. So if I think of Tony for me under 10s, when I'm not there, he's coaching. So how we'll link that in is, well, if you led the training, well, you pick the starting team on the Sunday and kind of lead the first team talk. And if I've got anything to jump in, I'll jump in. If there's both at the training, it's kind of, well, I might lead half, he might lead half, or I might just lead the full thing, depending on the topic or what we need to work on. I don't know if that you've heard is right there, if I've broke up or anything, but my main answer is going to be gone for a pint after.
I suppose that's like the plan.
Because like
the review,
that's building that relationship, isn't it? Yeah.
Good stuff.
I think as well for me, I would say that even sort of newly qualified coaches, level ones, will still have their strength sort of thing. So it's just being able to. So for me, I'm in a scenario currently with my grassroots team where I'm coaching with actually two dads and not just one. So it's like both of them have the different strengths. So one is quite more straight to the point and doesn't sort of beat around the bush. The other one's quite demanding of his players, and I'm sort of in the middle somewhere. So it's using their strengths when the time is right. So just having, as Joey said, getting that relationship and just saying, right, well, we haven't played this well now, so straight to the point maybe isn't going to work. So because the players have come off, they're quite emotional, you need to be sort of straight to the point and not very aggressive with them because they're young adults now. But then at the same time, when they're saying that, well, I don't want, the other coach saying he's a bit too demanding, well, we break it down thinking, well, how do we become less demanding while at the same time not letting their performance levels drop? So I would say as a co-coaching grassroots, just look for that other coach's strengths and don't be afraid to use it as and when.
Comes down to a bit of ego as well, doesn't it? Like, so not feeling that if you're the lead, you have to lead every single angle. So like you say, using different people's strengths, it's for the better of the players, and that's why we're there at the end of the day. It's not just for us to look good.
I think it's honesty as a coach as well, really. So if you're in a situation where you're a co-coach and like it starts to become where it goes out into your area of improvement into another coach, don't be afraid to step back and say, look, like jump in here, and as you say, because I think sometimes as a coach we try to get ourselves out of sticky situations with players and like talk our way out, where instead we should be saying to our co-coach, well, this is your sort of area, jump in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, again, that like gives everybody a little bit of buy-in, doesn't it? So rather than just, oh, you're just here to support me or you're just here to pick up my phones, like if everybody knows that when it comes to their strengths, they'll be utilised. Everybody has the same buy-in, everybody has the same drive behind it.
I think that communication's massive. There was one game. It was like a really close game we had. This is under 16s as well, by the way. And we're top of the league. We had to win the game to stay top, obviously. I'm telling my left back to do one thing when we've got the ball. So my assistants went round the other side of the pitch, which you're not meant to do anyway, and started coaching the left back. But while he was coaching the absolute wrong thing at what I was saying. So the left back in the middle of the game's turning around and going, well, what am I meant to be doing, yeah? Because you're telling me one thing and whoever's saying the other thing, you know? So I think that communication's massive, and don't contradict each other because it's the players that are at home then and the team.
Yeah, but it's that like communication and philosophy then, doesn't it?
Aye.
Match day co-coaching is something that is starting to like really interest me. Just sort of thinking like, obviously when it's your team playing on a match day, you want to see them demonstrate like you and do what they can do, and you want to try and observe the full game. But then if myself and the coach I'm working with is just observing the full game, like there's probably so many missed opportunities to challenge individuals and question individuals during a game as well, which is when it's at its most real. So I don't know, has anyone sort of got a good example of how they work on a match day with their coach or their co-coach?
Not so much something I've done, but I know something that they do in the college is when they're sort of co-coaching on a match day, they give themselves either pool of players, so they'll like focus on certain players,
Again, just give them like specific.
When they're sort of coaching on a match day, they themselves either so they like certain players or Were you talking there, Steve?
No, I think that was the lead. I think it's just Wi-Fi playing up again.
No worries. So as I say, what they would sort of do is they'd like either positions. So it could be one takes the spine of the team, the other takes sort of the wing, and fullbacks and all that, or like, as I think someone's mentioned before, it's like attacking and defensive side of it. So some will take like the way they set up the back six, shall we say, with the defensive midfielder, and then the others will take the other five. So I've never tried that myself. It's something I've been wanting to do, but I know that's what they do.
Yeah. Can I jump in, Jack, and just mention a couple of things?
Yes, please. Absolutely.
Look, just yes, please. I think from my point of view, I mentioned in our group earlier at the start of the session that for me, the only way co-coaching will ever work is if it's planned properly. I think it has to be 90% planning and 10% delivery. Otherwise, it just becomes a mess and a noise. And that can only work properly through developing a relationship with your co-coach. There has to be some time spent with each other where you kind of learn each other's strengths, weaknesses, how they like to deliver, what style they use, how the players react to each of you. Because ultimately, it's the players that need the best version of you and your co-coach. So for me, as somebody who works with the same group of players on a daily basis, it gives you time to get that experience with the players and with your co-coach. But if you blur the lines between who's doing what, it becomes a real mess, in my opinion. I think each session should always have a lead coach and not 50-50 on delivery or any kind of fractions like that. Because the messages just get mixed, and it brings it back to that planning aspect of how that session for that hour and a half or whatever you get with your grassroots club or any environment you're in, what does that session look like for the time you've got, and who does what in the jobs that you're doing? And it becomes really, really important that whatever you've planned, you can then try and execute on the grass. It won't go right every time you go out there. That's impossible. That's coaching. That's how you learn. And I think Croc mentioned it earlier about reflecting on how well that went. That becomes the next most important tool before you sit down and plan the next session that you deliver. That's my view on it. And to answer your question, Jack, around kind of match day coaching, it's impossible for one person to see everything, but you've got to try and understand that you can't see everything. Even like you might be manager or assistant manager, but you need them people's help to help your eyes see what you might not have seen. You might be focused on the game but missing bits and pieces, and that's when you've got to then step back and accept people's input without kind of having your nose put out slightly. And I just think coaching is something that needs time to develop. Me and you, Jack, couldn't go out tonight and deliver a session as brilliantly as we would like to, but given a month's working with each other, that same session could look a lot better because we learn from each other and learn what the players will get the best version of me and you co-coaching. And it becomes evolvement over time. And that's my opinion on effective co-coaching. I mean, look, I'm not saying that that's the right way to go about it. It's just in my experience, that's how I think it works best. Has anyone got any challenges or thoughts around that? Or
no, I agree. I think. Where's Dipper? Dipper, are you there, mate?
Yeah.
So Dipper shared something on Twitter earlier that Noddy put on around what is football coaching, and he said it's teaching young people and the game, which is football. Yeah. So I'm straight away out. Obviously, I've watched that earlier, and I'm thinking, all right, brilliant. I'm thinking about this now, and then I'm starting to think, well, what, like, because in my opinion, I think I would work really well with my co-coach now, who's Chris Hughes. And we like work really, really well together. And when I think about that off earlier, he's a teacher in a school, and that's probably my weakness. Probably teaching, but that's his strength. His weakness is probably young people, but that's probably my strength, again, in my opinion. So they go hand in hand. And then the game, knowledge of the game, I think we're probably on par with each other. So he's replacing maybe the teaching that I haven't got. I'm probably replacing knowing and connecting with the young people that he hasn't got. We're bridging each other's gaps there. and that's maybe is why we're working well together. So it's maybe something to think about in terms of like, and I know I like put something back to Steve earlier around like, you can't always pick who you're working with, but if you can manipulate in some way, if you're in charge of like a big group like the RTC, for example, and you can match people up around those three things, you might be in a good place to bridge a few gaps and make a good like co-coaching team. But no, it was good that, Andy. Cheers, Dips, mate.
All right, Pops. Can I just say something on that? As we're both watching a session, so if I'm leading and then somebody else is co-coaching, and the session's going ahead, what are we doing as a pair? Is it clear cut that I'm just running the show? I'm just thinking about working with Scott. I've worked with Scott in the past, and we can either work separately on 2 different sessions, or we might be doing a session and we'll ask each other questions along them sessions, and then Scott might say something what I don't see. So for me, the flexibility should be, if Scott says something, we're discussing it, and he usually goes, Dips, can I drop in there and say something? Yeah, go in, because he's seen it, and it's probably something I haven't seen, and vice versa. I think it's kind of be as clear cut to being being co-coaching and a lead coach, because I think being a co-coach, you can step further back and see a lot of things instead of being in it. You're probably picking up a lot of other things. But that shouldn't still limit that co-coach to step into that session or to try and help the kids develop, just because he's co-coaching.
Sorry, Dips, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you might like see, I've worked with Scott, and there's been some valid points which I haven't seen, but Scott has. Now, we're both there to help the kids. So there's nothing wrong, I don't think, as a co-coach. That's probably a really important bit, because you're giving them the opportunity to step back and observe, where sometimes when you're leading it, you're in it. You're probably caught up in the session sometimes. So I don't know, that probably is my view on co-coaching. And are we not just coaches? Can we work together? I don't know.
Yeah, it's what I was going to mention, but it's probably more of a question than a comment, to be honest. How comfortable do people feel stepping into a lead coach's session? Do you ask permission, or do you just go and do it? Is there an understand? If there's an understanding there beforehand that that's what might happen, do people feel comfortable doing it, or are we very much the more right? The lead coach is the one who's going to step in, and I'm going to be the one that steps back in as the individual stuff.
Yeah, I've seen that with Crofty. Crofty's, if he's stepping back and he sees something, he'll go, Dips, can I say something? Yeah, step in. That's the whole point for me. I think it's got to be a shared responsibility. And I'm a bit like Jack Gray in that respect. I find it quite difficult being a co-coach, because I'm always wanting to jump in, and because I've seen things, but I find that balance.
I think the important look. That's a great point, and of course, if you're gonna jump in and deliver a point that you think the players can get something from, that's great. But where it becomes messy in my instances, do you 100% know that the lead coach hasn't seen what you've seen, but just hasn't used that point yet?
Yeah.
Like if you come across to me and say, look, Andy, I've seen this, do you mind is mentioning it? Like as the lead coach, I would say, yeah, mate, 100%.
Yeah.
But where it gets a little bit messy is as if I'm delivering something and you've seen it, but you don't know if I've not seen it or have seen it, and then you go ahead and do it. Whereas I might be using that as part of building that session. So that's why I think what you're planning on paper before you go out, and people's roles and responsibilities and what they know not as acceptable, because that's not the right word, but the ways they're going to deliver that hour and a half, it has to be really, really nailed down, so you know. But that's just my experience with co-coaching, because obviously I'm doing it on a daily basis, and I'm I'm not saying that if the assistant jumps in on when I'm delivering something, then my next or nose is put out of joint, because
Yeah.
ultimately the players want the best version of the pair of you.
Yeah.
But like I say, it's coaches on some are, but you shouldn't be precious about whose session it is. But I think it's organisation wise and delivery, it's pretty important who's leading, who's assistant, and you can obviously you can rotate and share that role. Of course you can.
Yeah.
But I just for that 90 minutes to maximise it, I think you've all got to be singing from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah,
Quick.
from the same. Yeah, I agree. And that's maybe a pre agreement, isn't it?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, absolutely.
If you see anything, you know, let's discuss it, and then you can jump in from then. But
yeah,
I definitely agree with that.
Our 30 seconds beforehand is really important before someone is going to jump in, whoever it may be, because I can imagine there's probably nothing worse for the players than when you both stop the session at the same time, and you want to both make the same point, when the players are looking at you going like, who's actually coaching here? Like, are you both going up against each other? Are you both trying to compete? Or are you actually working with us?
Yeah, good point.
Stephen, have you got anything else? Is your connection all right?
I think so. I can hear you. I don't know if you guys can still hear me. No, I think like everything that has been discussed in the last few minutes there comes down to a relationship between coaches. So I know with the lad I coach with, we've got the understanding that regardless of who's leading or taking control of anything, like either of us can just jump in. If we see something, normally comes with it, or you mind me just jumping in? Yeah, not a problem. But it's about developing that relationship to be like that. It's not going to be like that straight away when you're working with somebody new, like somebody said before, but it's about getting to that point. So for me, the single most important thing is the relationship between the coaches.
Absolutely. I think like Crofty, you made a really good point in the breakout room originally around like how long it's took you and your the guy you coach with to develop that relationship. Like I think that's probably summed it up for me tonight around like it's not gonna get better in 2-3 weeks time, like or 4 or 5 sessions. It's took like it's gonna take a long time to get it right to help the players. Class. I don't know if anyone else has got anything else that they want to jump in with or talk about.
It was probably one last thing for me, and it's probably just because of the noises in the setting I work in. And Jono mentioned it, and I was thinking about it is your co-coach is not just the person you're coaching with or a football coach. It could be like S&C or the analyst. And I think Jamie mentioned this as well. But S&C in particular, every single session you come and watch at Middlesbrough, apart from mine, because I'm like obviously consciously thinking about it. The S&C will deliver, and the coach will be 40 yards away, standing next to where he's set up, and the S&C bloke finishes and they get sent across, and that for me just is pure, and that's where me and Charlie always, whenever he's doing his S&C, I'm there, and I'm dropping stuff in from a football context in terms of the movements that they're doing, for example, and how it relates to like maybe what we're going to do next, and then he does the same for me when I'm coaching. He'll come across and he'll obviously from a physical point of view he'll throw some stuff in, but that's one of my pet hates is seeing coaches just
realised I'm on mute. No, class. I think we'll probably leave it there for now. Obviously, the session goes on YouTube, so if you want to come back and watch it back, you're more than welcome. Stephen, massive thanks to you for obviously putting some sort of discussion points together and a few slides. Obviously, without you guys doing that, I can't put the coffee club on, so it's a massive help. Next week, the main man Crofty's going to come in and lead the discussion. I'm not really sure what it's going to be about yet, but I'm looking forward to it. So we'll go same time again next week, and we'll come back and have a bit crack about coaching as normal. All right.
Cheers, Steve, mate. Thank you, Paul.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, mate.